Candice Michelle, a name synonymous with strength, charisma, and glamour in the wrestling world. But behind the glittering persona and the roar of the crowd, there's a much darker story. Candice wasn't just a WWE diva. She was a woman fighting for recognition, for respect, and for survival in a world that often demanded more than she could give. As a child, she was taught that success meant sacrifice, that the spotlight would only shine on you if you were willing to endure everything, even the cost of your own happiness. Now, in the midst of a brutal career, Candice stands at a crossroads. She has it all, yet she feels like she's losing everything. As she prepares for the biggest match of her career, the pressure of fame, the expectations from her fans, and the internal battles she's fought for so long threaten to destroy her from within. The cameras roll, the crowd cheers, but inside, Candice wonders, is this really the life she's meant for? And how much longer can she keep pretending that everything is okay? Candice Michelle grew up in a world that never quite understood her. Born into a family where appearances mattered more than emotions, she was often overlooked and overshadowed by the achievements of others. She wasn't the popular girl in school, nor was she the one who stood out in a crowd. Yet, she had a burning desire to prove herself, first to her family, then to the world. Her journey into wrestling wasn't born out of childhood dreams, but rather out of a need for acceptance. As a teenager, Candice often felt like an outsider, unsure of where she fit in the grand scheme of things. The first time she stepped into a wrestling ring, it wasn't for the adoration or the spotlight. It was for the thrill of being noticed, of finally feeling important. The glitz and glamour of WWE beckoned, and Candice saw it as a way to escape her quiet, overlooked existence. But behind the scenes, the real battle began. Candice wasn't just fighting her opponents in the ring. She was fighting herself. The wrestling world wasn't kind, especially to women. It was a harsh environment where the pressures to be perfect were immense, and the line between entertainment and self-doubt blurred every day. Candice, once confident in her youth, soon found herself grappling with insecurity and fear. The constant criticism, the endless comparison to others, and the demanding physical toll took its toll on her mental health. And then there was the addiction to the spotlight, the need to be loved by the fans, to hear their cheers and feel their adoration. Candice didn't just crave success. She needed validation. And the wrestling world, for all its faults, gave her that in spades. But as her fame grew, so did the darkness inside her. What started as a way to escape her childhood pain had now become a prison, where each victory was followed by a deeper sense of emptiness. Candice had become a shell of the woman she once was, hiding behind the glam and glitter, struggling to keep up appearances in a world that demanded everything from her. Despite the fame, the trophies, and the cheers, Candice was alone. No one could see the cracks beneath the surface, not even her closest friends. She smiled for the cameras, made the fans laugh, and gave them everything they wanted. But inside, she was fighting a losing battle with her own demons. And every night, when the lights went down, the emptiness consumed her a little more. The day of the big match arrived. The arena was packed. The crowd was roaring. And Candice stood backstage, staring at herself in the mirror. The makeup, the costume, the bright smile. She had perfected the act. Yet, as she looked into her own eyes, the woman staring back at her wasn't the confident diva they adored. It was a woman who felt like an imposter, trapped in a life she wasn't sure she even wanted anymore. The anxiety was suffocating. What if she failed? What if she wasn't enough? The voices in her head grew louder, drowning out the sounds of the crowd. The battle she was about to face in the ring was nothing compared to the one raging inside her. Would she win tonight? Of course. She always did. But would it matter? Or would the same hollow victory leave her feeling even more lost than before? As the opening bell rang, Candice entered the ring with her usual flair, putting on a show for the audience. Even as her heart raced with uncertainty, her opponent was fierce, determined, everything Candice used to be. But tonight, Candice felt different. Every move she made seemed slower, less certain, as though her body was betraying her. The cheers from the crowd felt distant, like an echo in the back of her mind. She was fighting, but not just her opponent. She was fighting herself. The fear of failure, the overwhelming pressure, the pain of having to prove her worth with every move she made. It all crashed down at once. In a moment of hesitation, Candice's opponent caught her off guard, slamming her to the mat with a powerful move. The crowd gasped. For a brief second, Candice lay there, stunned, unable to move. The weight of it all hit her like a ton of bricks. Was it worth it? All these years of sacrifice, of constant self-doubt, of giving everything she had to a career that had taken so much? For what? The referee began counting. 1, 2, 3. Candice knew she had to get up. She had to keep going. But as she struggled to rise, something inside her broke. The realization was overwhelming. She was tired. She had given everything to this life. And yet, she felt nothing but emptiness. She couldn't keep pretending anymore. Not for the fans. Not for the company. Not even for herself. But then, as the count continued, something shifted within her. In that moment of weakness, Candice found strength. She wasn't going to give up. Not now. Not when she had come so far. With a deep breath, she pushed herself up. The crowd's cheers louder than ever, as though they could sense her struggle. Every movement, every muscle screamed in pain. But she fought through it. This match wasn't just about winning. It was about reclaiming her life, her voice, and her identity. With a surge of energy, Candice executed a perfect finishing move, pinning her opponent to the mat. The crowd erupted in cheers as the referee counted to 3. She had won, but as she stood there, victorious, her arms raised high in the air, the triumph felt hollow. The cheers didn't fill the emptiness. The crowd didn't erase the doubts. For the first time in her career, Candice was left with a bitter realization. Victory wasn't enough. It never had been. After the match, Candice made her way back to her dressing room, the bright lights of the arena still echoing in her mind. The victory, once so sweet, now tasted like ash. She sank into the chair, her face falling into her hands as the tears finally came. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel, really feel. The weight of everything she had been holding inside came crashing down. In the stillness of the room, Candice's mind raced. She had spent so many years chasing approval, trying to fit into a mold that was never meant for her. The need to perform, to entertain, had drowned out everything else. The wrestling ring, once her escape, had become her prison. She thought of the fans who adored her, the company that relied on her, and her family who had always pushed her to be more. But in the midst of all that noise, where was she? Where had she gone? She could no longer deny it. The bright lights, the crowds, the fame. It had never been enough to fill the emptiness she felt inside. Candice had spent her entire career living for others, and in doing so, she had lost herself. But tonight, something had changed. In the chaos of the ring, she had found a small glimmer of truth. She wasn't just a wrestler. She wasn't just a performer. She was a woman, struggling, evolving, and trying to figure out who she was beyond the persona she had built. The journey ahead wouldn't be easy. There were no quick fixes, no magical moments where everything suddenly made sense. But Candice knew she had to change, for the first time in years. She thought about what she truly wanted: peace. Not the applause or the validation, but the quiet contentment of being herself. A new chapter was ahead of her, one where she would have to face her fears, confront her insecurities, and perhaps even walk away from the spotlight to find the person she had lost along the way. As the tears subsided, Candice took a deep breath. She wasn't ready to leave the ring just yet, but she knew that the fight had shifted. It was no longer about winning matches or pleasing crowds. It was about finding balance, reclaiming her identity, and learning to live for herself. Her journey would be long, but in this moment, she realized that she didn't have to do it alone. She didn't have to pretend anymore. Candice Michelle, the woman behind the diva, was ready to step into the next phase of her life, ready to face whatever came her way, not as a superstar, but as a human being, just trying to make sense of it all. As Candice looked at her reflection one last time that night, she whispered to herself, "I am more than just this," and for the first time in a long while, she believed it. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but Candice Michelle was no longer afraid to walk it alone. She had finally come home to herself,